How you doing, guys? We talked about the rifle in the first video, your equipment. Second one, okay, you got a brand new rifle home and you're looking at it, okay? And me, I've got a 268 neck. So I wanted to talk about reamers just a little bit. I got my 6PRA reamer here. And so if you're gonna buy your own reamer, which I highly recommend, that way every single barrel you do is the same. And once you've gone through all the testing I'm going to talk about, and you burn up a whole barrel just testing, getting it optimal for your reamer, then you can do your next barrel, and all that data that you used on that first barrel will transfer over to the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. So it's really good if you're doing this long time to get your own reamers, so you're not wasting having to do all that testing all over again. So the first thing you want to see is when you're getting your own reamer is how far the bullet's sitting inside the case. And I've got my boat tail sitting right to the edge of the neck. It's not going down into the case, it's not compressing all my powder, it's not doing any of that. It's just sitting right at the edge of the neck. I don't know, hopefully you can see that. But it's not going way down in the case, smashing everything. So that'll give me a consistent bullet release. So you get that set that way, you do all your measurements, and you order your reamer so it's, your free bore will allow your bullet to sit right there. And so this is a live round ready to go. That's my exact seating depth that I used just last week at Nationals. And it worked, and it shot just fine. And it shot that way for the last 3 years. So that's your reamer. That's, you know, there's a lot that goes into designing your own reamer, but you can get the specs from most 6PRA stuff out there, and it's all going to be fairly close. But the free bore, I think, is really important. You don't want that case way down in there, and you don't want it way out, because if it's way out and you start going through your barrel life, pretty soon your bullet's seated out so far that, you know, it won't even sit in the case. So that, you know, is an important part right there. Next, you want to start loading, but you can't just take some brass and stick it in there, because it won't fit. Because I got a 268 neck, a loaded round, you know, unturned neck is going to be way too big, probably somewhere around a 269 or 270 for a loaded round with an unturned neck. So now you want to start talking about brass, and brass is, I don't know, everybody's got their own favorite. Mine in 6PRA, I've been shooting Peterson brass. It works awesome. And you can do your own testing, but most of the other brands out there, the alloy in the metal is just hard. And so trying to get consistent bullet release and neck tension out of really hard brass is tough. You got to turn everything just right. And what I found is with other brass, turning to where you get a consistent bullet release makes me turn the necks too thin. Now, why do I say that? Well, when you've got your loaded round in your chamber, you've got your loaded round, but you still got that neck clearance inside the chamber. Now, what's optimal for neck clearance? So when you go to turn all your brass, you turn it right. Because when I first started, I mean, I was asking everybody, what's the best? Well, I had a championship shooter tell me 0. No clearance. Make it fit perfect in there. And that worked for him in his caliber. And he was just shooting for score. He wasn't shooting for, you know, for group, and trying to get his rounds off fast. He could just put them in there nice and slow, one at a time, and it worked perfect. But for me, shooting long range in bench rest, trying to shoot groups, I got to get him in there. So I realized real quick, I couldn't go with this 0 clearance. And I've had other guys tell me, oh, 11 thousandths is the best. So what is it? Is it 0 or is it 11? How thin you want to turn those necks? You hear all these things, turn thin to win, you know, does that really mean anything? Not to me, it doesn't. So I went through the painstaking testing to try to figure out what is the best clearance inside there. And I'll tell you how to do it. I'm not going to tell you exactly because I don't know your chamber, I don't know your reamer, I don't know your barrel, I don't know all your stuff. So, but this is how you do it. You start by turning the clearance. Turn 5 cases at 1/1000th clearance, 5 cases at 2/1000ths, 5 cases at 3. And so when you're out breaking in your barrel, you can shoot these things and do 5-shot groups with those particular cases, and you're going to see real quick which is the best clearance. So you don't have to listen to all those guys at the range with all their sayings of turn thin to win or 0 or 11 or whatever it is. You're going to know exactly what it is for your rifle. So you have to waste a few cases right off the bat, but it doesn't take too many, because within 4 or 5 thousandths worth of testing, you're going to see real quick, oh, there's the best right there. And it's a real simple test, but I don't know too many people that do it. I was messing around, a guy named Ted Larson, really good bench rest shooter for the last 40 years here in Washington. He turned him 0. And I tried that and tried that and tried that. And he would never even bump his cases back in a die. He would shoot them and just reload them just like that. He was real fussy about not wanting to mess with that case. It's already fire formed perfect. He wanted to leave it alone. Well, I couldn't get that method to work in long range, bench rest. It worked great in short range for score, but long range I couldn't get it to work. So I went through the painstaking deal of turning cases, all those different increments, and shot them all while I was, breaking in the barrel anyway. Fire formed on my brass, fire formed it all, went out a second time, shot those cases again, and did a powder test with them, and found my node. Once I found my node, and I shot them again just to see which ones were grouping the best, and it was obvious right off the bat. So if you want to know how to find out the optimal clearance, that's how you do it. I wish I could just tell you for your own, but I don't know what you're shooting. So that test is really simple to do. Anyone can do it. Just turn them different clearances, shoot them, and you'll know real quick which one's the best. So I want to start talking about brass a little bit. A lot of brass is really good brass, but if you want optimal brass, you start looking at the case neck. This is just fired brass, straight from Nationals. But that case neck, different brass is different hardnesses in their alloy, whatever they do. This brass is not the same as alpha brass or Lapua brass or whatever. This stuff it's heavier, but it's softer. So Peterson, for me, seemed to get the best bullet release. It being heavier, there's less volume inside. It doesn't take as much powder to get the same volume or velocity as the other cases also. So that's one thing I liked about it right off the bat. I didn't have to use as much powder, and with powder being scarce these days, it's, every little bit helped. So I'm shooting pretty much full grain, less powder with Peterson as I would be with Lapua or Alpha or, some of the other ones out there. So another thing to think about is when you're turning that case, the thicker your neck wall, the more grip you're going to have on your bullet. So in other words, if I turn this really thin, like 10,000ths on each side, I'm going to need more neck tension to get the same neck tension as if I was, say, 12 and a half. 12.5 on each side, you've got more of a wall, and it'll just hold better, and you won't need near as tight as a bushing. So that's stuff that you gotta play with after you've figured out how thick to turn your brass. But these are all the steps and the painstaking testing that I did over my first year, because there's so many guys out there that'll tell you so many different things. It's like, my gosh, is it zero? Is it 11 thousandths clearance? Is it brass? Is it Peterson brass? Is it Lapua brass? All this kind of stuff. All I can tell you is the last 3 years in a row, I've shot Peterson brass and I've won. And now, the reason I think that is because it's a softer alloy, and so I can get the proper thickness without it being too hard. I tried it with some other brass, and to get the same thickness on the wall, it was too hard and I wasn't getting consistent bullet release. And other people might think I'm crazy, but that's what I found. I found that the thicker the wall, the better the bullet release. But with Peterson, it's softer, so it just got that sweet point to it. Whereas other brass, it's just a little too hard. So you got to turn it thinner, but then when you turn it thinner to get it soft enough, well, now you've got too much clearance inside the chamber. And a lot of guys are going to argue with me on that one. Guys shoot no-turn necks and all this kind of stuff. But if you really want to know what's optimal, do that simple test, and you won't have to listen to anybody anymore. You'll know for yourself exactly what's best for your rifle. And it's weird. A lot of guys are very good shooters, and they've got all kinds of clearance inside their chamber. Personally, I don't think it's optimal. But, you know, that's their way of doing things, and that's what they want to do. But I want to get every little thing in my brass and in my neck turning and everything optimal the first time. So yeah, you got to burn a few cases to begin with, just to see what it is. But then after that, you got years to come. If you've got your own reamer, every barrel you do, and all your brass will work from barrel to barrel, and it'll be a step that you won't regret doing. So I wish I could just tell you exactly what to turn, but like I said, everybody's got a different reamer, everybody's got a different neck clearance and all this kind of stuff, so it's hard for me to just tell you, but I'll tell you how to figure it out. And there it is. Do that simple test. Turn 5 of them, 1,000ths clearance, 2,000ths, 3,000ths, 4,000ths, 5,000ths, 6,000ths, and just go out and shoot them. And you'll know real quick. It'll be painfully obvious. If you don't change anything else and just do that one simple test, isolate that one test and shoot it, you'll know exactly which one works best for your rifle. So you can see I've got another reamer here. This is my 284 reamer. I just went through the painstaking thing of doing all the testing I did in 6PRA 3 years ago. I just did it all again for 284. And I found a sweet spot there too. And I just did the exact same test. 1,000ths, 2,000ths, 3,000ths, went out and shot them, and it was painfully obvious exactly which clearance was the best. And so I'll tell you right off the bat, it wasn't 11,000ths and all this turned into win. It wouldn't. None of that makes any sense. I guess somebody came up with that slogan years ago. And I'm not sure, guys out there, I'm not sure if people mislead people on purpose just to send them out on a wild goose chase, but I've got nothing to hide. I'll tell you exactly how I figured it out, and that's how you figure it out. So, like I said, I love to just tell you what it is, but I don't know what caliber you're shooting. I don't know what your neck clearance is. I don't know any of that stuff. You only know that with your rifle. So, once you get your rifle brand new sitting home, I would highly recommend you trying some Peterson brass. It's just awesome. It's not so hard. It's heavier, and you won't have to use as much powder, and it's got that sweet softness in the neck. It just gives a perfect bullet release every time. So that's my spiel for today, and try some Peterson, try turning your necks. Look make sure your bullet's not seated way down inside your case, so when you order your reamer, you've got the right thing to start with. And believe me, I didn't just wake up and realize all this. I tested and I tested and I tested. I've gone through multiple reamers, multiple chambers to get to what I think is optimal. And so the freeboard, start with that in your reamer, and then go to some Peterson brass and try it because it's got that sweet neck. And what else? I wanted to say something else and I'm having troubles remembering. But anyway, I guess that'll be for the next video. So have a good one, guys. Keep them small.